Welcome to Mindful Moments. Nourish your mind on the go. This audio uses AI narration to present our original book analysis. Today we're diving into The Forgotten 500. It's a gripping account of Operation Halyard, the largest airman rescue mission behind enemy lines in World War II. Imagine being a downed airman, stranded in enemy territory after bombing raids on Ploesti, Romania, not knowing who to trust, or if you'll ever see home again. That was the reality for hundreds of American airmen. This deep dive will uncover their harrowing experiences, but also the incredible heroism of the Serbian people, who risked their lives to help them, and the audacity of the mission that brought them home.
It's an amazing story of survival and courage, but it also delves into a lesser-known chapter of World War II, challenging conventional narratives and highlighting the complexities of wartime alliances.
Let's start with Ploesti, Romania. It was a crucial oil supply for the Nazi war machine, making it a prime target for Allied bombers. But it also meant facing intense flaks and German fighters.
The book vividly describes these harrowing experiences through the personal stories of the airmen, like Claire Musgrove, a ball turret gunner. He had to dig his parachute out with his bare hands after his B-24 was crippled. Then there's Tony Orsini, a young navigator on his very first mission, and Robert Wilson, a seasoned pilot who witnessed the tragic crash of a fellow bomber that stayed behind to protect his damaged aircraft. These stories capture the fear, the close calls, and the incredible ingenuity required for survival.
I was particularly struck by the story of Robert Wilson, having to perform emergency surgery on a crew member, with a piece of shrapnel lodged in his skull, using only the limited medical supplies on board. It highlights the extreme pressure and resourcefulness they had to display under such dire circumstances.
Absolutely, and their challenges didn't end once they bailed out over Yugoslavia, a country in the throes of a civil war between Tito's partisans and Mihailovic's Chetniks. Imagine landing in a war-torn country, not knowing the language, or who to trust. They had been told to trust Tito's forces and avoid the Chetniks at all costs.
But that's not what many of them encountered, is it?
Not at all. In fact, the book reveals a very different reality. Many airmen, like Lieutenant Fellman, whose bomber went down in August 1943, landed expecting the worst, only to be met with unexpected kindness and support. He was greeted by Chetnik fighters, who, instead of harming him, lined up to hug and kiss him. This goes against everything they had been told to expect.
It's amazing how these villagers, many of whom had very little themselves, shared their food and shelter, even giving up their own beds for the airmen. These acts of compassion, despite the risks involved, really challenge the preconceived notions we might have about enemy forces in wartime.
This is one of the things that makes The Forgotten 500 so compelling. It challenges our assumptions and reveals the complexities of war, where alliances are fluid, and heroism can be found in the most unexpected places. The author, Gregory Freeman, dives into the political landscape of Yugoslavia during World War II, specifically the conflict between Tito's partisans, who were communist, and Mihailovic's Chetniks, who were royalists. Both groups were resisting the Nazi occupation, but their ideologies and goals were vastly different.
And the Allies initially supported Mihailovic, right?
Yes. But as the war progressed, Allied support gradually shifted towards Tito, influenced by a combination of factors, including political maneuvering and propaganda that painted Mihailovic as a collaborator with the Germans.
So even though the Chetniks were helping the downed American airmen, they weren't getting the support they needed from the Allies.
Exactly. The book highlights this disparity in support through the first-hand account of George Muselin, an OSS agent who witnessed Mihailovic's loyalty and efforts to protect the airmen. He was incredibly frustrated by the lack of material support given to the Chetniks compared to Tito's forces, especially considering the risks the Chetniks were taking to help the Americans.
This seems to be a turning point in the narrative, where the focus shifts from the immediate survival of the airmen to the political intrigue surrounding Mihailovic. And the impact of this shifting allegiance, it raises questions about the motivations behind these decisions and the consequences of choosing one ally over another.
This political backdrop is crucial to understanding the complexities of Operation Halyard, the mission to rescue those airmen.
It sounds like the stage is set for a rescue mission, fraught with challenges, not just logistical, but political as well. How did this daring plan come together in such a tumultuous environment? So how did this incredible rescue mission, Operation Halyard, even come about in the midst of all this political turmoil?
It all started with a simple letter. George Vujovic, a Serbian-American OS officer, received a letter from his wife Mirjana, who was still in Yugoslavia. Her letter revealed that there were hundreds of downed Allied airmen being sheltered by Mihailovich's Chetniks, far more than the Allies realized.
This must have been a turning point for Vucinovic, realizing the true extent of the situation.
Absolutely. Despite the prevailing political climate and the skepticism surrounding Mihailovich, Vucinovic was determined to get these men home. He became the driving force behind Operation Halyard, pushing past bureaucratic obstacles and risking his own career to make it happen.
It's inspiring to see such dedication and unwavering commitment in the face of adversity. Tell us more about the mission itself. How did they pull off such a complex operation in a war-torn country?
It was a logistical nightmare, to say the least. They had to organize clandestine flights into Yugoslavia, landing on a makeshift airstrip in the mountains. Under the cover of darkness, it required meticulous planning, coordination, and a healthy dose of courage. Vucinovic assembled a small but dedicated team of OSS operatives for this risky mission. George Muzelin, eager to return and help the airmen he had left behind. Nick Rodricic, a skilled operative, and Art Jabillian, a talented radio operator who had narrowly escaped from Yugoslavia just months before.
Imagine the tension and anticipation as these men flew into enemy territory, knowing the risks involved. And for the airmen waiting to be rescued, it must have been a mix of disbelief and overwhelming relief. When they saw those planes landing,
the book captures those raw emotions beautifully. The airmen, many of whom had been hiding for months, couldn't believe their eyes. There were tearful reunions, emotional farewells to the Serbian villagers, who had risked their lives to protect them, and the constant fear of being discovered by the Germans. Each takeoff from that precarious mountain airstrip was a gamble, a desperate race against time.
It's a testament to the courage and resilience of everyone involved. Over 500 airmen and Allied personnel were successfully evacuated through Operation Halyard. That's an incredible feat.
And it wouldn't have been possible without the unwavering support of the Serbian people, who risked their lives to shelter and protect those airmen. They faced constant danger, potential reprisals from the Germans, who were notorious for their brutality.
The book mentions a chilling incident where the Germans, suspecting a village of hiding airmen, rounded up 20 villagers and threatened to kill them if they didn't reveal the airmen's location. It's a stark reminder of the constant threat they lived under and the extraordinary courage they displayed in helping the Americans.
And yet, despite their heroism, the story of Operation Halyard and the role of the Serbian people, particularly Mihailovich and his Chetniks, was largely suppressed after the war.
Why was their role downplayed? They were instrumental in saving the lives of hundreds of American airmen.
It goes back to the shifting political landscape. The narrative about Mihailovich being a collaborator with the Germans had taken hold, and acknowledging his role in the rescue would have contradicted that narrative.
So the airmen, sworn to secrecy, returned home, their stories largely untold, while the very people who had saved their lives were being vilified.
It's a tragic irony. The airmen were debriefed and ordered not to talk about their experiences, especially their interactions with the Chetniks. Imagine their frustration, knowing the truth about Mihailovich's loyalty, but being unable to speak out.
It must have been incredibly difficult for them. How did they cope with this injustice?
Many of them struggled with the burden of the secret. Some wrote letters to newspapers. Others traveled to Washington, trying to set the record straight. They knew the truth about Mihailovich and felt a moral obligation to clear his name.
This speaks volumes about their character and their gratitude for the Serbian people who saved them. Did their efforts have any impact?
Their voices were largely ignored at the time. The political climate was not receptive to their accounts, and the official narrative prevailed. But their efforts were not in vain. They kept the memory of Operation Halyard and the heroism of the Serbian people alive, eventually leading to a reassessment of Mihailovich's role and a greater appreciation for the complexity of the situation.
This brings us to the aftermath of the war. How did these airmen rebuild their lives after such a harrowing experience?
Their stories are as diverse as the men themselves. Tony Orsini returned to his family in Jersey City, relieved to be home, but forever changed by his experiences. Art Jabillian, haunted by the news of Mihailovich's capture and execution, defied orders and risked his career to speak out in support of the man who had saved his life and the lives of so many others.
These personal stories, interwoven with the larger narrative of the rescue mission and the political complexities, make The Forgotten 500 a truly captivating read. It's much more than just a war story.
Absolutely. It's a story about courage, compassion, and the enduring bonds forged between unlikely allies. In the crucible of war, it challenges our assumptions about heroes and enemies, reminding us that history is rarely black and white.
It also highlights the importance of individual stories, the power of personal connections, and the enduring fight for truth and justice. What struck you most about this book is the enduring legacy of Operation Halyard for me. It reminds us that even amidst the chaos and brutality of war, humanity can prevail. The Serbian people, despite facing their own struggles, chose to help these stranded airmen, knowing the risks involved.
That's a powerful takeaway. Their actions speak volumes about their character and the universality of compassion. And the airmen, in turn, never forgot the kindness they received, their unwavering efforts to clear Mihailovic's name, even when facing opposition and silence, highlight the profound impact this experience had on them.
The Forgotten 500 also underscores the importance of seeking different perspectives and challenging established narratives. The story of Operation Halyard, for so long overshadowed by the dominant political narrative, forces us to re-examine our understanding of history and the complexities of wartime alliances.
It's a reminder that history is not static. It's constantly being shaped and reshaped by new evidence and interpretations, and sometimes it takes individual voices, like those of the airmen, who fought to tell their stories, to bring those forgotten chapters to light.
This deep dive into the Forgotten 500 has been truly eye-opening. It's a story that deserves to be remembered, not just for the daring rescue mission itself, but for the human stories at its core.
It's a reminder that even in the darkest of times, courage, compassion, and the bonds of humanity can shine through. And that sometimes the greatest heroes are the ordinary people who risk everything to do what they believe is right.
We highly recommend you read The Forgotten 500 to experience the full impact of this incredible story. It's a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the power of hope in the face of adversity. To delve deeper into this inspiring story, subscribe to Mindful Moments and purchase the book via the link provided. It's a tale you won't soon forget.